Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. We're just waiting for a couple more people to join, and we're going to start at 7 sharp. So. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thanks to Julie and Jane for hosting tonight's webinar. My name is Kelly and I'm part of the Edco team. And just before we start and before I hand you over to the girls, I'm going to just mention a couple of the usual house rules for the webinar series. So just to let you know, tonight's session is being recorded, and we will share the recording with you afterwards. There's a Q&A box throughout, so you can add in any questions during the presentation, and then Julie and Jane will answer them at the end, and they can follow up if you have any more follow-up discussions. The girls are both active on X or Twitter, so you can you can kind of follow up there with more questions too and reach out. And then if you need a certificate of attendance, you can just drop us an email and we will get that sorted, and I will pop my email address into the chat so that you have that if anybody needs the certificate. So I'm going to hand you over to Julie and Jane. Thank you very much, ladies.
Super. Kelly, thanks so much. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming this evening on an absolutely miserable night to talk about the Business Alive investigative study. So I suppose I'm going to hand you over to Jane first, and she's going to get us started with this. All right. Let me see now. There we go.
Thanks. So guys, you're all very welcome, as Julie said. Look, we're going to try to get through this for you as quick as we possibly can. We know it's a Tuesday evening and no one wants to be sitting at a computer screen for the night, so we promise we will stick to the point and get this done as quick as we can. So obviously what you see on the screen there, the brief, we've all seen this, and I'm sure we've looked at it a million times at this stage and put it away to the corner of the desk and said we'll leave it alone. But we were like that as well. We just had a go at tackling it about 10 days ago, and so this is what we come up with. So I suppose your brief, obviously we've all seen this, and I suppose there are little key things there that we're saying. I suppose the big thing, we have the SEC cover page, the 1,500 words, our word count is going to be a big thing to take away from this, with a maximum of 10 images or graphs as you see fit, to save it as a PDF, I suppose, and then really to just have our backup. So they're just all our little instructions that the SEC have provided for us. I know that's been different to other projects and stuff. I know Julie,
economics was different, and I know we had in economics, we were given a particular form, a document that we had to use and put into, and then that actually caused problems depending on the different types of software you were using in your school. So what this is doing really is just giving you the guidelines for the type of document, so you can use whatever word processing software works for you and your school. And this is all this really is just giving you the guidelines as to the type of formatting you're allowed to do. So that's all that is really, is just telling you in terms of the fonts and all of that, and we'll show you all of that in the sample briefs that we've put together. But it's not hugely complicated. It's just allowing you the freedom to use whatever word processing software that works for you and your school. So it'll actually cause you less problems in the long run.
Brilliant. Thanks, Julie. So I suppose obviously just to say kind of our format for this evening is I'm just going to go through some of kind of the the necessities before you actually start this project, and the guidelines in using our student activity book. And then Julie's actually going to take you through the sample that we have come up with, that we've written on Ryanair, that you all should have received into your school, your registered email address with Edco. You would have received it. If it didn't go into your inbox, as both Julie and I experienced, it's in your clutter. So just check the clutter if you didn't receive the project, but you should have definitely received it by now. So I suppose this here, how do I manage this in my classroom? In the previous webinar, Julie and I both mentioned that we're using we're a Microsoft school, so I'm sure Google Slides, Google Classroom will allow you to have something similar, but we just obviously have OneNote set up. This is their class notebook, and every single student will have their own notebook, and we have a separate investigative folder and a section there as well for all students and for teachers. And I suppose the reason we're doing this is that it's kind of giving Julie and I the opportunity to share resources as we go and links for the whole class, anything that we feel is going to help the projects as we go along. So when we get the brief like that, we'll be throwing you know, kind of good links and stuff in for them. But that's just giving you an idea of how we're both working it in our classroom at present.
And then what I will say as well
of
about that, in terms of classroom, in terms of time allocation, I've taught economics as well, so I think that's important to say. So I'm coming with this, I'm coming at this with experience of doing a project, you know, getting a project brief like a lot of you are now, and not having a clue what, you know, what to do. And I suppose learning from my experience, this is my plan, right? So this is our content library over here on the left. So this is where I'm going to put like any content, any useful resources, links, that kind of thing for the whole class I'm going to share in there. Over here, as Jane was saying, this is what the student folder will look like on the right. So that'll be an investigative, you know, their investigations folder. That's going to be for sharing research and articles all the way through the 2 years of study. But they're going to have a separate AAC folder. One of the things that you'll see in the brief is that we have to stand over authenticating the work for our students. So this is how we plan on doing that. What I will do in terms of time allocation in my classroom, I will spend, when I get the brief, I initially, and we've done some work on this one already, but I will give them time to come to terms with it, to listen to look at it, to read it, to kind of understand it. And I might say maybe do a class a week at the beginning. I might spend a double class for the first class looking at it. I'll give them time to go away then and come back the following week. And I might just kind of touch on it once a week for a little while and give them time to research, gather, figure out what they know, and we'll talk you through those stages. But it's really important that they have time to sit and process it. It's 20 hours of work. It is not 20 hours of writing. So there's the thinking time is as important for them as the putting pen to paper time. And then this is what I'm going to be encouraging them to do. I'm within this AAC folder here that they have in their own notebook. I'm going to be getting them every single class we work on this. I will be getting them to create a new page in their AAC folder, and I'll be saying, right, what links did you find today? If they found a good link, I'll be getting them to copy and paste into that to keep track of it for their referencing later. And I'll be getting them to do like a little reflection. So at the end of each double class, what I'll get them to do is I'll say, right, go into your AAC folder, take a minute, write down a paragraph, a couple of things on what you thought about today, what was challenging, any new information that came your way. And again, that's all just trying to improve their reflecting skills as well. And that when it comes to actually reflecting at the end, they'll have a bank of kind of reflections and they'll be used to it, and they'll have a bank of information that they can go through. So that's kind of what I plan on doing at the beginning, maybe a double class or once a week. And then as the time is coming up closer, I will sit down and I will check this with students as they're going through, and I'll be saying, right, how are you getting on? And I'll be working with them, but I'll be able to monitor their work and I'll be able to see how the progress they're making by checking in on their notebooks here. So that's, I suppose, one of the ways that we're going to be trying to do to authenticate the work as much as we possibly can.
And I suppose that investigative folder, that's something that we both kind of been using at the moment with the fifth years, getting them to put in articles, whether it was on Enterprise and finding something. So it's kind of just getting them used to the process instead of hitting it with them in February when they get the brief. So obviously this one here then, we just again submitting the procedures for submitting it. And I'll be honest, guys, I'm not an economics teacher, I'm business and languages. So I've been leaning hugely on Julie when it came to this. And I know, I'm sure I'm not the only one who hasn't had kind of experience of the economics. So, you know, Julie was the first to say this is much clearer than they had for economics before. It's a very, very simple guide of what we have to do, clear guidelines and how to complete it and to submit it. You know, I'm not kind of, even what we've been doing in class with our fifth years at present, we've been doing a bit of work on this. I haven't even shown them that page. No. I'm not going to worry about it too much at all for the moment. I'm just kind of leaving it to them, but I suppose it's just something for you to realize. I've read it a couple of times myself, just getting the clear points of it, but just at least the guidelines are there for us with how to submit it.
And I think even maybe, once we've got our actual brief and something, I'm sure we'll do something again, Jane, on kind of all of this side of it. And we can come back to all of this. But my only thing to say there was to have plenty of copies of it. And that
Yeah.
you're kind of, that's the only thing I take from that at the moment, that they've got plenty of copies and that they're saving their work on a regular basis. But all of that is just to talk you through the procedures. So that wouldn't be something that I'd be hugely concerned with at the moment. Your main concern really is getting to look at the brief. What does it mean? And how are you going to work through that at the beginning?
So then, I suppose, obviously, this is what we all received as well. And we kind of took some key things out of that. The first thing there you'll see that we've highlighted, that they have to be able to demonstrate evidence of your learning in Leaving Certificate business. So I suppose that's a real key thing. They have to be able to show the evidence that they've taken from the time that they've been studying this course. So when you're trying to get them to, try find their national, their local, their international examples, and they're referencing, all of this is going to be very apparent. They have to make links to everything that they've done in order to kind of get through their research question that they've chosen. And then I suppose the 6 stages, really step-by-step guidelines in that, and we're going to go through that with you. The 1,500 words, that might sound like that much, but even when Julie and I were doing the sample, to get it to those 1,500 words, and if it's anything like the economics is, they are very, very strict on the word count. You have got to stick to it. I think we went 2 words over and Julie was like, no, Jane, I need to take 2 words out. And I was like, oh, it can't be that bad. She said, no, it is. That's what it is.
Yeah,
So
I wasn't taking any chances. I know the first time round for economics, I think they were a little bit slack on it, but they've been getting tighter as the years have been going on, and they are. So I wasn't taking any chances. So I was like, no, we're finding 2 words and we're getting rid of them. And actually, that kind of brings us on to that last part here, like the brief, whether you like it or not, will be designed to separate your H1s from your H2s and your H2s from your H3s. And this last point here, that you will gain marks for communicating clearly with skillful brevity. There is a huge skill in saying what you need to say and saying it so well and saying it in very little words. And there's a skill in that. And that'll take time. The first time they draft this project, they will be well over the word count. There will take time to break that down and to cut that back and to say what they need to say in I suppose in less waffle, really, and get to the point quicker. So there's a skill in that, and that's what they're also testing in this, their ability to communicate information. We just thought it was important to note that.
Yeah, because I think that's where, look, we all know the dreaded AI. We know that we all have that fear that our students are going to throw their project in to AI and give it back to you. I think that's where their ability to communicate clearly, how your students speak. So if you're getting a project back that doesn't sound anything like them or the language is completely off, I think that's why they have this down. You're gaining marks communicating clearly. So I think that's something just to be really, really mindful of and careful as we go through it. And I think that's definitely, as Julie said, where the separation will be. So obviously our topic, and I don't know how many times I've read this now at this stage, but again, I think on first reading, I was like, oh, okay. And then the little triangle, kind of our little, like our diagrams showing us our interlocking sections, our marketing mix, our technology and our ethics, and our digital side of it, absolutely brilliant. And I think what Julie and I did, we kind of looked at it straight away and said, okay, you really need to take time, put yourself in the mind of a 16, 17-year-old student here and go, right, that is a big paragraph of information. And we just need to pause and take it step by step and go through it. And that's exactly what we did. And then this was something that has worked really well for both of our classes. So both Julie and I trialed it. We handed this out to put our students into groups, handed this out in an A3 page, they had the brief in the center of it. And the first thing is I read through it for them. And I asked them just to highlight any keywords at all. Now, bear in mind, we're only in school. It's still very early. By the time you get the brief in February, they're going to have a lot more of the content covered. But it was really interesting. An awful lot of our students would have done junior cycle business anyway. So they were familiar with quite a few of the words. But we asked them to underline or highlight any keywords that they got from it. And then I read it a second time and they did the same thing. And then what we both asked our classes to do was to put down absolutely anything that came to mind using the words that they had underlined. And I think, Julie said, like, she asked her class, who's overwhelmed.
Yeah, I was saying it to Jane afterwards. I was like, I have a huge range of ability in my Leaving Cert business classroom. I have bright students who will be going for their H1s, and equally I have students who are going to struggle with ordinary level. And so when I read this out to them, and I just said, you know, what are your thoughts initially? I could see my brightest kind of going, oh, brilliant. You know, they were kind of like, they knew it was going to be a challenge, but they were looking forward to it and enjoying it. But equally, I could see some faces looking back at me going, I actually don't have a breeze of what she just said. So I kind of, one of the things I just said was, I was like, well, hands up if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, you know, and I threw my own hand up in the air and was like, you know, me too, when I first read it. And then I could see the relief on some of their faces. There was one student in particular, and I could actually see the relief on his face, kind of going, okay. And I was like, right, we're going to take time with it. And this is kind of, and I'll show you, Jane, these are from my classes, but I just thought it was interesting what they picked out. And bearing in mind, as Jane said, we haven't covered any of this topic yet. And come February, when they get their other one, you know, they will have. But you can see there they were listing companies. They were, and I'll show you some of the ones that Jane had there. And you can see some of, like, they had written some really good things. And I think, Jane, you can jump in there again now. Yeah.
I actually thought it was interesting. So obviously with the stakeholders, they've all covered stakeholders. So they were listening out their stakeholders. They were loving the competitive side of it. We had just done the green for business when we were finishing enterprise, and we'd looked at that, and we'd actually looked at a local business, and we were talking about the local enterprise office and everything. And straight away, one of the students wrote down the green for business, and she circled it because she was thinking about her ethics and being sustainable. Why go green? Why are companies going green? Then, like, her extra P's, she knew that I told them there was put down your marketing mix. So it was, for her, the marketing strategies were straight to social media, AI, like it was just talking about apps. And these would be two bright girls. I only showed you one side of it. The other girl had all her stuff written on the other side of the page. But then again, even simpler ones up the top there, they just had digital, social media, online marketing, apps. So they were thinking, don't know where that's gone there, Julie. Is that gone?
I think Julie maybe has just dropped off there. Have you, Julie?
Oh, I don't know where she's gone, guys. Sorry, one second now.
I'll get on to Julie, Jane, and you can work away there, and I'll see where she's going.
Yeah, so she just obviously sharing the PowerPoint, but carrying out that activity was really, really good. Now, when I did that, I only did that the other day, and I set a 20-minute timeline on it. So from when I read out the question, read out the brief to them, and then did it a second time, I left them then about 15 minutes to work through it. And yeah, it was really, really interesting. So I would highly recommend that. But I said to them, look, guys, I'm learning too. It was just a really interesting kind of activity to get with them, to get them to do as well. Then I'm trying to think, so just where Julie has a project. Okay, so then where we're going to bring you to, I know waiting for it to come back, is actually then to our own guide. And if you turn, I don't know if any of you have it open there with you, but if you turn to page 171 in the student activity book, we have the project guide there for you. And that is exactly what both Julie and I are basing our class activities from in relation to this project, how we're going to carry it out.
Oh, you're back, Julie. Sorry, you had myself and Jane.
Sorry, I actually don't know what happened. I literally just...
You're fine.
You dropped off.
I just dropped completely. Yeah. So I'm so sorry. So let me get back to it, guys.
Slide 9 there for me, Julie.
Perfect.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, so I'm so sorry, Jane. Did you have to kind of improvise there as we were going through?
Oh, God.
Oh my gosh, can you say 1 second? 1 second. I knew this was going to happen. I actually said this to Jane in advance. I was like, I'm actually
all right. So anyway, I just while Julie's getting ready. So on page 1, student activity book. One of the very first things that we do, and you'll see there we have it, is that we get the students to create a mind map, which is exactly what we did there with that brief. We put down the brief in the middle and let them create their mind map out of it. And that is something, I don't know if people are using the activity book, you'll see at the end of every chapter, Julie and I have left space for them to chat. And I find that my students, even though we've only done 2 of them so far, it's actually really beneficial. So when I said it to them today, right, come on, let's go create a mind map, put down everything we know, they were straight into it. So here, just gonna put up there now, the next slide.
Here we go. So yeah, apologies.
So again. So again, that's exactly what you had, putting it out and trying to get them to start putting down their hours. Now you'll see it there. It says 2 to 3 hours. Remember, as Julie said, it's not 20 hours of writing. So this whole initial understanding is going to take you a bit of time to keep going back to the topic and trying to pick out the key information that you're aware of. And then down the bottom there, we have it for you, like what do I already know about it? What do I want to know? Can I identify any examples in my local area, national or international? How can I find out more about this topic? So again, now, obviously, and we have it here, there is a downloadable version of this on the Edco Online, on the platform there for you. And we would highly recommend that you do that. So if you go into the documents, you've got there the downloadable version. So again, any sort of project that you're doing, kind of a great opportunity for students to start practicing this. So they're not seeing it for the first time in February. Now, this can be a real simple little project that you can get them to do, but at least if they're going through the student template guide, it'll definitely make it easier for them.
For sure.
So that's a step that we're definitely going to be doing. Then again, up here, we have the timeline there for you. And again, this is all written in the student activity book for you. This is probably definitely going to take you some time to come up with your research questions. So you've gathered your initial research. We've realized what it is. I know what I don't know, what I need to know. Suitable companies. I know that's at a service sector. For us, Julie and I sat down. Okay, we might have taken 2 hours, but we did spend a bit of time going, okay, what company can we talk about that we've already mentioned that would be relatable to students, that teachers can use as a good one? We'd spoken about in the book. So we said, right, Ryanair, perfect. But again, we had to think back. We went back to our SMART goals that we'd done in our unifying strand, looking at all of that and making sure that we're able to find information. We knew Ryanair was something that we could find plenty of information on. And again, the project plan. So we were looking at our timeline. How are we going to do this? We knew all the different areas that we could access for Ryanair. They're always in the media. We know that they're kind of gutsy with their advertising. We know they mightn't be the most ethical at times. So for us, we were like, right, perfect. But again, that was us working in pairs and kind of thinking of our topic, looking at what do we already know. So we weren't starting something from complete scratch. And again, that's what we'll be kind of trying to say to our students. Go with like when you're picking your local, your national or international, go with something that you're going to be able to find the information on and that you want to spend that time researching on. So I think that's really, really important. Something
I think
suitable.
so. And I think as well, it's like Jane was saying, something that they are going to be able to get information on, and that company, like that something that they're interested in, and that they can show that they have a connection to it. And that's one of the things that they'll actually ask, I think, if you look at the marking scheme on it or the guidelines, that they do talk about that students should be picking topics that they maybe have a connection with or why they're interested in this.
So then the next piece then we have is our plan. And you do need to refer to the plan. This is the thing. So you don't obviously submit your project plan, but you definitely need to be able to refer to it in your introduction about what it is that you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and what you're going to do at the end. So it's definitely going to keep them on track. We're looking at the tasks that they need to complete, the resources that they need, how long they're going to spend, and the risk. And I suppose the risk, you're thinking, right, if I'm going to take it from this website, the risk is plagiarism or something. So I need to make sure that I'm not, taking things directly, or if I am, I need to make sure that I'm going to reference it. So I suppose putting that plan in place, and again, this is all a step by step. They're not going to have written anything at this stage. It's just working through before they actually start putting pen to paper there.
And I think yeah, sorry, Jane. And I think even trying to kind of identify as well, saying about the types of research they're going to do, if they're going to do primary research and secondary research, and kind of maybe setting out, right, where can I access my secondary research? Let's take a look at some, and writing those in the resources. When would I like to have that done by? Setting themselves deadlines, right? I'm going to try and find somebody that works there. I'm going to do maybe a survey of my own classmates to see what they thought about Ryanair or whatever the company is. So I need to make my survey. I need to make sure that I get it submitted to everybody. I need to, so that they can kind of make that to-do list for themselves, and then they can keep themselves on track. And also, I think it'll just give them a good, clear pathway to actually preparing and writing it, So I do think it'll be very useful. And we do say there, it won't be submitted, but they will refer to their planning in the project. And if you look at the guidelines for this, and they actually give you the features of quality for it as much as we have, which is the only marking scheme we have at the moment. And they give you that. So they do ask for that. Is there evidence of their planning in the project? So they will refer to it,
Then just on to the research part that Julie said there, I suppose the really good thing is we have given you a list of all the different company websites in the textbook, really kind of useful ones to use. And I suppose that's something to bring the students' attention to. There's the CSO, there's all the local enterprise, everything. So I suppose they're like, are they credible? Are they reliable? Well, obviously everything from those websites is going to be credible and reliable. So it's encouraging your students to kind of use as many of those as possible and to steer away from Wikipedia. And it's, kind of making sure they're putting in their keywords. So again, really helpful sheet there, my source of information, the date access, which is going to be key for them when they're doing their referencing at the end of it. And then what it is the key information that they got from there. And just keep reminding them to record everything. The last thing we want to do is have students hand up a lovely project with absolutely no referencing, and then they're gone trying to find every quote or every example once again. So kind of just using this kind of activity guide for you, for the students step by step the whole way, that should make kind of the final writing process much, much easier for them.
And there's two things there I just wanted to draw your attention to. It was just, they do mention in the guidelines again about using both primary and secondary data, the different types of data. For economics at the beginning, we would have encouraged the students, maybe like at the beginning when they were including primary data, a lot of the time it was bringing questions up that the students didn't have the word count to answer. I do think that there is going to be benefit to including some primary data into this kind of a project. So I'm going to show you the project that we did. But one of the things I was thinking, gosh, wouldn't it have been lovely actually to do a little survey? No, I didn't do it because, well, we didn't. But I was like, when I was looking back on it, I was like, wouldn't it have been a lovely idea to do a quick 2 or 3 question survey to my classmates? What are their thoughts about Ryanair? Or even asking, to your teachers, Miss, can you send that to a few teachers on staff, or send it to another class, and just getting a little bit of feedback on what they thought from a customer perspective. And if they could include those statistics, then they could do a nice little graph. They could include those statistics there then inside in their report, and refer to them if they were saying things about customer service. And so I do think there's going to be benefit to doing a little bit of primary research here. And I think it'll be slightly easier, I think, than it'll be different. But again, and also considering a variety of perspectives to make sure they're looking at all of the different stakeholders in the business to consider and to keep an open mind. I think that's kind of important too when they look at that.
And then the last 2 bits just before we actually get to the sample then about our analysing it. So making sure now is the time to review, summarise and analyse. And again, the tips on page 12, we have that back there again in the book to look at. Breaking down all the information out into small parts, identifying the key patterns, trends or contradictions. So it's my analysis now. I have all my information and I need to analyse it and make sure I'm only presenting the information that is going to get me the appraisal that I need for this project. Highlighting the most relevant or important parts and presenting my findings using graphic. Now, you're under no obligation. You don't have to include graphs, but you can do, like we included 3 kind of images more so than actual graphs. Probably again, if we were doing it, we would put in some more, but it was more just kind of a timeline as well, really, into kind of our first attempt at it.
And I think too, though, it says up to 10. I certainly wouldn't be including 10. I think actually 3. I think 3 was plenty. I think if we were doing it again, we probably would have included maybe some primary research and do a little graph instead of one of the images. That might have been nice. But I certainly, I think 3 was actually plenty, because I think too many, and you're trying to, they're conscious. Are they trying to replace the words with images? So I think 3 is plenty. It enhances them. They only include the images if they're going to actually enhance and support what you're saying. Otherwise, don't include them. There's pointless, because then and then it doesn't. It shows more that you actually understand and know what you're talking about if you've included relevant images that are supporting the information, as opposed to just throwing stuff in for the sake of it.
Yeah. Down there at the end, like kind of timeline on these from those previous 2 sections, 4 and 5. It's going to take you about 6 hours on this to really analyze all that information, kind of what they're, the guidelines that what we're going from. So then I suppose the last thing is applying my learning. So here I have to demonstrate how the findings of my investigative study connect with my learning across the business specification. And again, that was one of the key things in the brief, that you have to show the relevance to your previous knowledge in business and the material that you've learned. So again, whether it's that you've taken your local, national or international. Now, in this case, they asked for someone in the service sector in Ireland, but obviously we were able to do, it works as an international example as well for us. The linking to the themes, for us, it was a big link, obviously, to ethics and sustainability for us, and then your own perspective. So you need to be putting in their own opinions on this, and what their analysis is and what kind of their final judgment is. And again, have those findings influenced my perspective? And it's to make sure that the students, when they are finalizing their project, that's exactly what they're doing. They're hitting all of those bullet points there, that they have either said whether what they've carried out from their research question, whether it has influenced or has not influenced their perspective. So I think that's really important, that they do have that at the end, and that they've made as many reference to all of these things here, that as much as possible.
So I think that's kind of the end of what we're going to do for this bit of it. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm just going to show you I'm going to show you a sample a sample project. So if you just bear with me for 1 second, and we will
And guys, while Julie is she's going to go through the sample with you. If there are any questions or anything as we're going through, I'll monitor the questions here as well. So feel free to throw them in, and I will try to get back to as many of you can. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was just coming on to say, Jane. If anybody did have any questions, feel free to pop them into the question box there, and we'll make sure that we get them answered and back to you.
Super. Okay, so let's go through the sample brief. And like I said, we'll just kind of talk you through. We chose an example based on I suppose based on something we thought would be familiar to students. They'd all have maybe experience of it. We've got in the marketing chapter in the book, we have an analysis of the 7 Ps of Ryanair done out. So it ties in nicely with some of the theory that we've got in there. So for us, we felt it was a nice link. And then I suppose, and we thought the students would be familiar with it. But you can see there from the little brainstorming things we did, the students had tons of examples. And as well, the company, it said operating in Ireland. It didn't actually have to be an Irish company. It just had to be a company that was operating here in Ireland. So the SEC, will provide you with a cover page, but for now we went with this. And so what you can see there really clearly on my cover page, I have my title. So that's my research question. I have my different sections, and I have the word count for each one, right? Bringing a total of 1,500 words. It does give us guidelines for each of these sections as to the approximate word count. If you look at the brief, it gives you an approximate word count. Right, you don't have to stick that. The only thing you have to stick to is the 1,500 words. And so you can see here, when I was starting this project for the very first time, what I did was I actually I set all the formatting, and I set that first. So and I put down my headings. So I had and I started each section on a new page, and then I made sure that all of those section headings were size 14, black, bold, and font Arial. And then I made sure the rest of it was all size 12. And then at the end of it, I adjusted my margins and I adjusted the line spacing. They're not allowed to underline anything. They're only allowed to use bold, italics, numbering, and bullets. So you can see that's all I've used in the document, and we've labeled everything, and we've included all of our references. So we've kind of included a little checklist at the end of each section to kind of say, right, this is, make sure you've included all of these. The other thing I would say to you to go through as well here is, if you look at the guidelines for completing the AAC or the investigative study, they have at the back a features of quality. That is all we have at the moment in terms of marking scheme, and that I'd imagine that's all we're going to be given. So that's what you have to look at and it doesn't quite correlate with each of the sections, but you have to compare that. And if you look at the activity book that we have, you'll see we've included those features of quality at the back of the project template. We've included those features of quality. So look at what they say for high, for students who high achievement on it, and then say, right, have I included all of those? So you'll see here the first, our introduction. Really clearly, I've started off by saying, right, so Ryanair, I'm showing why I've actually chosen Ryanair. I've said that they're one of Ireland's largest service businesses, one of Europe's leading low-cost airlines. I've supported that here. You can see really clearly I've supported that here with a statistic or fact, carrying 184 million passengers and recording profits of 1.9 billion for 2023. And I've just very briefly sourced I've referenced to that. And then I've showed how they support Irish jobs. And again, according to the Irish Examiner, they support over 26,000 jobs annually. You can see here, I have talked about why I think they're really good for this particular case study, for this particular project. And I've kind of referred to their misleading pricing, offensive advertising, some questionable environmental claims, and they're an interesting case study. And then I've also made it relevant for me because I've talked about personally as a Ryanair customer, I was curious to learn more about the rationale behind their marketing decisions. You can see then in the next little bit, I've referred to the planning. So I planned my project in stages, beginning with refining my research question. I gathered data and information. And so you can see here, I've tried to mention my different perspectives. So I've referred to that I've considered lots of different stakeholders. And I've referred to my structured approach, my planning, about staying focused, meeting deadlines, and then trying to build. And then I've summarized then the last sentence there. I've said, right, here's how, right, this is what I'm going to be looking for now in the rest. My investigation aims to explore how Ryanair's aggressive strategies compromise ethical standards and how this impacts their reputation, right? And again, in this, right, have I stated my research question? Absolutely. Have I explained why I've chosen this question? Yes, I have. And I've reflected on how I engaged with my project plan. And it's slightly over the word count, but it's approximately 200 words. Okay, in the next section, so the introduction section is going to set out what you're going to be doing. It's what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you're referring to your planning. The next section, and the way I would look at this is section 2 is going to be your investigation and findings. This is where I'm going to showcase all of the research that I've done. I'm going to be reporting what I've heard. I'm going to be recording all the reporting on the information. So you can see here the first paragraph, and you can see even the formatting of it. I've started with a little paragraph there on my research methods and purpose. Okay, so to investigate my research question, I used a variety of sources. I wanted to show that my sources were reputable. I also wanted to talk about getting views on Ryanair while also viewing lots of stakeholders. I've referred to a regulatory authority like the advertising standards to kind of bring in an oversight perspective and policy perspective. And then I also wanted to ensure I've had Ryanair's voice. So I looked at their social media and their digital content. And then you can see I have looked then to my findings. It'll be one of your biggest sections in that you're going to be presenting all of your findings here, okay? And then in my next section, I'm going to be summarizing. I'm going to be picking out my main points from this section. And I'm going to say, right, here's what I think. Here's my analysis of that. This is where the links are going to be now to the various different parts of my theory. This is my opinion, and I'm supporting my opinion with fact. So based on my research, which you're going to show here, I believe this. And then in your conclusions, you're pulling all of that together again. So when I say this to my students about economics as well, because it follows that same format, you know, you talk about your investigation, you present your findings, you look at the analysis, and then you summarize it. They kind of say, am I not repeating myself a little bit? And you almost should be. You should be kind of saying reinforcing, and condensing and summarizing the information down into as you go through each section. So that by the time I get to the conclusion, I'm really clear on exactly the points you're making. And I'm like, yeah, they made that argument really well. So if I just go through some of the findings that we were talking about here, so you can see we've tried to. And as we were going through all the information, it was becoming more evident the more we were going through the information that it was like, right, there's little stuff about misleading pricing, we can bring that in. There's stuff about controversial advertising campaigns, we can bring that in. So you can see here we've talked about a particular campaign that they were promoting, and then you know why it was controversial and the ethics behind that. And then we've talked about the advertising and how the involvement of the AAC. I don't want to read through the whole report because well, you can do that yourself. I just want to talk you through why we've included things. But you can see what we're doing as we're going through all of this. I'm bringing in lots of different information. So if I just go back up here for a second, you can see there, I found articles, it was on Mayo News about this particular campaign. And so that's where, and so you can see I referenced that. So I'm just referring, all I'm doing is stating the information that I found there and what the issue was and what the controversy was. And then if I show here, I've referred then to very clearly the ASAI and what they said. And actually, Jane and I were mentioning, or Jane mentioned there at the beginning that we were trying to cut back on words. And you can see this is one of the things that we were trying to cut back on words. And I was saying like, we had something there and I was like, no, we're just going to take out those 3 fancy words that sound beautiful and we're just going to put and that, and that's the idea of the skillful brevity, that you're just replacing. Sometimes you're saying we're going to try and say that in one word instead of 3. And that'll all come at the end and they'll be going through it, reading through it, and kind of refining. But you can see here, so we're kind of, we're referring to a little bit of theory there. You could perhaps have brought in a little bit of theory there about the misleading pricing. Could you have gone to the CCPC? Could you have brought in some consumer legislation? So there was definitely scope to do that. It's just that it's hard to fit all the words in. And then here we've talked about their digital and social media. And here I'm trying to show, when I'm doing this, that I'm not biased in my information. So while yes, they can be controversial about all the hidden charges and their advertising campaigns, their social media is brilliant. And so we did want to acknowledge the positives. So you're trying to show actually that I'm not going down one route. I'm actually looking at both sides of the argument, and I'm going to show them that shows my perspective changing. So you can see there that actually when we were doing our research, we found that from an RTE article, and this TikTok content creator, her videos have garnered, or for Ryanair, had garnered over 400 million views, and the account actually gained over 1 million followers. So it's been hugely successful for them. And actually, they're playing on all of the negative publicity, and that's actually been a really positive thing. So I think it's important too that I'm showing balance there when I'm doing that. And then I wanted to bring in a couple of other things that were connecting with ethics, was the environmental claims, and this was something that they actually had done good work in. So again, I'm trying to show balance. I'm trying to show the positives and the negatives, and you can see here then we're talking about their employees, and while we may have thought, and there would have been things in the past over their pay and their working conditions, and I've referred to that here, and we talked about the impact, how that can affect their public perception and their branding. So I'm connecting that to the brief. But again, you can see I've mentioned the fact that they bought their 25 homes close to the airport for their employees, indicating a change in their company values and improvement in company culture. And I'm bringing in all topics on the course. I'm talking about branding, I'm talking about company culture, the importance of leadership. That's all course content. And that's really important. So you can see here, if I do a quick checklist there, did I explain the purpose and relevance of my different research methods? Yes. And the sources I've used? Yes. Have I presented those in an appropriate format? Yes, I have. You can see I've really clearly laid out the different sections. So we had about, was it 5, I think, different areas for the report. And I've considered a variety of perspectives. So I really tried not to be pigeonholed into my views. I wasn't looking for information to support what my initial bias, and I was looking for any information that's going, oh, actually, okay, there's some positive things and there's negative things. And so in terms of word count, I think we were pretty spot on there. As I said, the only other thing that I think I would have been nice to include there would be, and you might include it in the analysis section, would be to include a little bit of primary research, and doing a really simple survey about what people thought about Ryanair would have been a lovely way to do that. So I think primary research will be relatively easy. It doesn't have to be really complicated. A 2 or 3 question survey would have been ideal here that you could have referred to. So here we have our analysis and evaluation. So now I'm taking all the information that I found and I'm analysing it. So I'm looking at it in detail and I'm evaluating. I'm giving a judgment. I'm saying, what are my thoughts? And I'm trying to support that with some of the information that I've researched. So I'm saying here that Ryanair has built its reputation on being Europe's cheapest airline, a strategy highly effective in attracting price-sensitive customers, but my research shows that it comes at a cost. Ethical concerns around transparency, responsibility and fairness. So I'm talking then again, I'm referring back to this. So you can see I have pricing transparency. So I'm saying their dynamic pricing and ultra low fares are eye-catching, but the lack of clarity about add-ons often frustrates customers. And I'm talking about the values of ethical marketing. I'm bringing in my theory, right? I'm saying what I think, and I'm kind of saying, right, it may sell seats in the short run, but in the long run risks losing trust and repeat custom. So I'm making a judgment call on, yes, this is what I think. Students have to feel comfortable giving their opinion in this. They have to make a call. If they sit on the fence, they won't make an evaluation on it, and that'll come across in the project. So they have to actually be comfortable going, based on what I've thought, this is what, based on what I've discovered or researched, this is what I think. So the next little bit then, if I just go on to the next little part of it, and you can see there we've supported there with a little graphic, and their advertising style. So again, I'm giving my opinion, I'm analysing it. Their approach is bold, cheeky, and sometimes deliberately shocking. It grabs attention and cuts cost. But I'm saying that they've achieved visibility, but if they're reinforcing a brand image of being careless or provocative rather than trustworthy. And while their TikTok, accounts have increased and their social media has increased, that's also right. So I said it's been largely successful. It's increased their engagement and their following, and allows people to see a different side to the brand. So I'm kind of trying to give my opinion there on what I think, but while at the same time, I suppose referring back to the information. So I've referred back to the research, but I haven't mentioned it again. right? I did that in the previous section. Here, I'm just now talking about, right, this is my opinion on it. This is what I think. And again, they're environmental studies. And here you can see here, sustainability is becoming increasingly important to customers. Now, that's not just a random statement that I've said. I'm going to support that with a fact that I found in a study by PwC in 2023, found that over 70% of Irish consumers are willing to pay more for products from ethical firms. So I'm supporting that by saying it. Again, could you have done a little bit of primary research there to say that? You know, in a study of my classmates, you know, of students, of 17-year-old students, they discovered that, you know. So it's not, I haven't made a random statement. I've supported that by a fact as well. But I have said here that they're really making strides to improve in the area of environmental strategy. And again here, and right? But I'm saying about maybe a concern that if, however, Ryanair exaggerates their green credentials, it risks alienating their environmentally aware passengers and losing credibility. So you can see I'm trying to show my opinion, I'm trying to evaluate, and also, and again, another little thing there, I'm just, because these are bringing back memories as I was trying to cut back on word count. I think, like, say, when we were doing that, I had an and there or something. I had and I was like, I got rid of that and I put a little semicolon. So I was like, because that was going to be one less word in a symbol instead. So I was like, that got me down from the 1501 to the 1500. And that'll be where, you know, it'll be, I know I've been very pernickety, but nonetheless, I just wanted to be, if we're going to do one for you guys, we wanted it to be right and spot on. So then the last thing I'd mentioned then was about their employee relations. So I had mentioned this in my research, so I wanted to refer to it here again. And I've talked about how, you know, you can see there I've brought in the theory about stakeholders, corporate social responsibility, employee wellness programs. That's all evidence of my learning. And I'm talking about previous disputes have attracted negative, but they've been investing lots of resources in supporting their staff. So I'm giving my opinion there and I'm saying, look, this is what they've been doing. And then you can see that I'm kind of talking there about right, their impact on the brand reputation, right, while they still fly with them, they're maybe saying that it's cheap and cheeky rather than trustworthy, and that might weaken the loyalty for Ryanair customers. So I am making a call on it. I have said this is my opinion. So yes, they're doing good and bad, but ultimately this is probably going to be an issue for them. And they are choosing profitability over ethics. It's worked commercially, but it does create long-term reputational problems. So you can see here, as I'm coming towards the end of my analysis and evaluation, I'm kind of making a call and I'm making a statement on what I feel. And again, right, so let's take a look at my checklist here, and you can see there, I've evaluated clearly there, right, they've strong, right, ethical considerations strongly impact Ryanair's marketing. When it fails to meet ethical standards, it faces bans, bad publicity and customer frustration. It can achieve sales, but cannot fully replace trust. So you can see all the way through, I'm not repeating myself, but I'm reinforcing the point that I'm making for my customers, or for the reader and for the marker. Okay. And let's take a little look at what I am saying here in my checklist, and you can be the judge of this, whether I've done it or not, or whether you feel we have we analysed our research findings? Absolutely. So we've linked it back to theory, we've brought in theory. Have I evaluated? Have I given a judgment supported by fact? Yes, I have. And have I tried to demonstrate originality and critical thinking? Yes. So I'm trying to show that I can look at both sides of the argument and go, well, actually, this is my opinion, this is what I think. And that was 600 words they're suggesting here. I think we came in at slightly under the 600 words there for that. And then the last part of my project is going to be my conclusions. And in this section here, you can see, again, I am summarizing my key message so that when my examiner is finished reading it, this is the last. So this has to be quite strong. You want to finish quite strong. You want to show them that you've really learned. And this is the key message that you're driving home in this particular piece. So we're saying, from my research, I conclude that Ryanair's aggressive low-cost marketing does compromise ethical standards. And I've referred to the issues that I researched. It'll have real consequences. I've referred to my regulatory rulings. So I've brought in the ASAI regulations and rulings there. I do say that they've remained successful because their prices are so competitive, that they are you know, that thing between their profitability and their and the ethics and the long-term reputation, but that we're reinforcing that image again, or that point again. It damages trust and loyalty in the long term. I'm referring to my planning. My planning helped me complete the study effectively. So here you can see I am showing about how, like, right, so we're bringing back in our planning. So we're saying, look, this was important. I set out key areas to research and focused on specific areas. I was able to stay organized and collect strong evidence. My perspective also changed. At first, I thought their main issue was hidden charges, but I also discovered that environmental claims and advertising styles are just as important. I'm talking about, you know, how it connects to the real world of business. And then you can see in conclusion, I believe Ryanair will need to take ethics more seriously in its future marketing if it wants to strengthen customer trust while maintaining its competitive edge. You know, so you can see I've tried to present those conclusions justified by the analysis and evaluation. Yes, right. So there's nothing new. There should be nothing new introduced here. There should be nothing new introduced in the analysis. In the analysis and evaluation and in the conclusions, I did not refer to a single thing that I hadn't presented already in my findings. The only thing was I supported it maybe with another particular fact. I've talked about how my planning contributed to the successful completion of the study. I've discussed how my perspective evolved as a result of the study. Could I have done more? Probably, or possibly. We could have looked at that elsewhere, and consider how my findings connect to the real world of business. And if you look at that last little in the project guide that we have for you in the activity book, you can see how we've got that little spider diagram. We've got all the links that we want them to make. This is where they're going to show all of those connections. You know, here's how it connects to all of that. And that was 300 words. And then well, that's approximately 300 words. And I think ours came in at just under that. And I just want to show you the referencing that we did. So we have the body and the link. Okay, and you can see I've got the link. So I will have encouraged my students in their AAC folder every time they're referring to something. I would say as soon as they find an article, I'm going to get them to copy that link, pop it into their OneNote notebook, and keep a record of it. And then at the very end, the last thing I do will be to tidy up this, and I will go back and I'll make sure that I have all the links posted in. I have the date that's been accessed. The only book we referred to really was our own. And you can see we've referenced that. But other than that, really, I've just tried to reference where I got it, the year of it, what it was, and the date I accessed the information. And then all I did then was copy and paste that and make sure it was in alphabetical order. So I just highlighted the whole thing, and on my word processing software, clicked A to Z. And then the last thing I did then, when I was finished doing all that, I just checked the formatting, that each of the sections, you can see when I was doing that each of the sections was starting on a new page. So you can see there how, say, there's my investigations and findings. So each one started on a new page. It's clearly numbered. And I just made sure that everything was in 1.5 spacing, and I just kind of tidied up the formatting of it. So I suppose that's the project. I hope I hope you find it useful. The other thing I would say, I just wanted to say as well, in terms of, I know it's ages down the line, but in terms of saving the work, what I do for economics, and I will be doing this as well because I'm terrified of losing any of the work. As I said, they'll all have their AAC folder and their OneNote. So they'll be saving bits as they're going along. When it comes to actually having the Word document, I will get them to email me the Word document. I will bring them up to the classroom beside me, and I'll say, right, is this your work? Are we happy with it? Okay. Right, so I make sure their exam number is in and all the details are in. We check it together, and I'll say, are you sure you're happy with that? And then I save it as a PDF. And then I say, right, so I save it. And then I have a folder on my own OneDrive for all of their projects. I save all of them there. I then save a backup of all of those on a USB key. And then I send them, we have a staff SharePoint, so I save them on there for my deputy principal, and then he uploads them to the portal. So in terms of, so I've got 2 copies, so they're saved in 3 different places, and the student should also have a copy, so they'll be saved in 4 different places. So that's just in terms of the logistics at the end. I know we're a long way away from it, but when it's in my mind there about the formatting.
I know, guys, there's just loads of the questions, and I've been answering them as we go along there, but there was a couple that I felt probably need to be addressed for everyone. I know some people are mentioning there saying, where do they get the sample? So in the email that you got from Edco reminding you about this webinar tonight, if you scroll to the bottom of that, there's a purple box there that you can click in and actually get the project. And if you didn't get it, I asked Kelly there and she said just contact sales at Edco. And then they'll be able to send that out to you. As long as you're using Let's Do Business, then you have access to that. Anyway, I think that's correct, Kelly, yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
and it's just sales@edcolearning.ie is the email address. So if anybody doesn't have the copy of the brief as Jane highlighted there, attached in that email, or if you can't find it, just drop us an email at sales@edcolearning. But I've popped it in the chat there, and I just will again actually. And then just as a reminder, if you need the certs, it's that's in the chat as well.
Just another one there, just one or two. I'd say everyone's asking. Julie, I know you can't see these, so I know that the brief will be released in February of this year, but is it recommended to start the project in February? I presume that's supposed to be in their 6th year of business. What are the main topics you'd recommend have covered with students before starting the project with them? I'm nervous of not having enough topics covered, or not the most relevant topics covered by February.
I'm definitely going to start it as soon as I get it. I won't be waiting until 6th year to do this. I think the longer you give students to sit with this, the better. So I'm definitely starting it relatively early. I might not start it the first week, right? I might take time myself to kind of go through it and see, what are my thoughts, and see if even I can kind of say, go through it and kind of say, right, what are the what are the main things here? And can I, is there anything useful that I can share with them from the CSO or anything like that? So, stuff like that. But I will absolutely be starting it. And like I said, I will probably start this in, we'll say March, right? And what I will make sure then as well is if I need to adjust my scheme of work to cover any content, I will. So what I'll do then is say, right, and then I will keep teaching as I'm working on the project. So I will teach this, I might dab at it, maybe a class a week. I might do a double class at the beginning, and then I might spend a class a week doing it. And I might give them, say, right, I'm going to leave you 2 weeks now, and I'm going to come back to you in another couple of weeks, and we'll check in again. But I will absolutely start it early, and if I need to adjust my scheme of work, I will. But the beginning part that they're going to be doing is gathering all of that information, looking at what they already know, making connections, so you'll have time then to cover any topics that need to be covered before that.
And that's why I said, a lot of when Julie and I were developing the scheme of work, we were mindful of the fact that we were going to get a brief. So studying the likes of marketing, your digital, your stakeholders, your enterprise, all of those things are going to play a key role in this. Even if it's not directly aimed in the brief, it is going to come into your project, because you can be guaranteed you'll be able to use a lot of that information. And I had people asking then, obviously, remember, we put up that scheme of work on the Edco online platform for you, that you can download it and rejig your scheme of work. I said, like, Julie and I are covering the scheme of work up until then. And yes, we'll probably sit down in February and say, well, hold on, we need to switch and do something. But those first couple of weeks, because the students are doing the vast majority of their research, that allows you time to go, well, actually, I need to take a topic there that I have planned for November of 6th year. Do you know what? I'm going to swap that. I'm going to do it now. So don't be afraid of that. I suppose a lot of people are asking, I know 1 or 2 people said, oh, why did you add this in when it wasn't in the brief? The brief is your brief, and how you choose what research question you choose out of that is up to you. So, when we looked at on the impact and the effect that it was having, that's because that's the part of the research question that we decided to choose. So as long as you're following the brief and you're answering the brief, every single question is going to be different. I had others asking, can some students do the same company? That's probably going to happen. You will have students doing the same company, but as long as their research question is completely different, it's going to form a different project anyway. They're not going to have the same information. I think that's the biggest thing, to make sure that their research questions are different. If they're the same, then no, you have an issue there. But, as long as the fact that they are choosing their own research question, you shouldn't have anything the same. I think that's fair to say, Julie.
That's the whole, yeah, I think so, that they're all going to be looking at it, like they all have to develop their own research question on it. So while the brief says, because I was just looking at it again there, it said you are required to explore how ethical considerations impact marketing for a business of your choice operating in the service sector in Ireland. So it's how they impact marketing. There's 7 P's of marketing. So like, their branding, their reputation, that's all part of it. The we talked about trust, that was all in it, responsible marketing. So that's all forming part of that. And it's a business of your choice operating in the service sector in Ireland. So it's not that they have to be Irish, they just have to be operating in the service sector in Ireland. So I think it'll be important that your students all choose something different. Would I be concerned if they were all doing this? Well, if there's a couple doing the same thing, not really, because they're not all going to be able to find something different. So there is going to be overlap, but that they all should be coming at it from a different angle, and that they'll all have a slightly different question. And I do think too, they'll need to do a little bit of research and then go, actually, Miss, I was found that this really interesting article about this, so I'm going to look at this perspective. And you say, right, perfect, that's great. Yeah. So, yeah.
I feel very under pressure for time and wondering how we find the time to go through this sample brief and let current students run through a practice. I said, Julie and I, we looked at the brief last week. I haven't picked it up this week. And you know what? I mightn't pick up that brief this week. I might look at it again next week. I think it's just to make them familiar with it by the time February comes along, that you can be working on this sample brief from now until February if you want. It's just getting the students used to it. The only reason we're doing that is that when we come to February, they're not hit with all of a sudden having to brainstorm and have to research and do all of those things. So even if it is that you're only committing maybe 30 minutes a week to it at the moment, brilliant. You know, that's kind of up to you how much you want to spend at it. It's only there so that come February, they are not hit with this and don't have a clue what the first couple of steps are. Remember that beginning is all about the research and breaking it down and looking at the key information that they're aware of. So don't get too overwhelmed with that.
And I think as well, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, Jane. And this person as well was saying about that you feel under pressure for time. I hear you. You know what I mean? Like we're kind of feeling the same. We're like, gosh, you know, like we're all trying to, because we're so used to the old scheme where we knew exactly when we were going to be finished our course. We knew exactly what we're doing. And it's that uncertainty for us all now. But I'm just trusting the process. And I'm also realizing that I have to spend time reinforcing some of these skills. So I have to talk about, like, I have to get them practicing researching. I have to get them practice writing. Will I get them to do a whole project as detailed as this? I don't know if I can devote 20 hours of work to another project and this one, but I'm certainly going to get them to research. And all I'm going to do in terms of this brief is I'm going to get them to, and what we've just done, introduce the topic to them, get to do a little bit of mind mapping, get them to come up with a possible research question and get them to find some articles. And that's, even if I can get them to do that much, I think that would be hugely beneficial. And any opportunity I can get them to practice those skills, I think would be good. Do you know? I see another question here about how current does the research need to be?
We have a timeline on it. We haven't been given a timeline, but I think if you can make it relevant to what you're discussing,
I would say a couple of years. I would say, yeah, I would be avoiding going, yeah. I wouldn't be going back too far.
Yeah. So will we do another one of these when the real brief is released next February? Yeah, we'll probably be as frazzled as all of you, but yes.
We will, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So we'll be on to us to do that. So yeah, no, absolutely we will. And look, even if it's a case that it's a brainstorming session for the teachers, well then fine. Absolutely, we will be doing another one when the real brief comes out.
And I think as well as we're all in this together, you know what I mean? And I think we have to support each other. So whatever we can do to support each other, absolutely. So yeah, of course, we will absolutely do that to support everybody. Yeah.
And they completed in 5th year. Look, like if you have the whole lot done, fair play.
I probably would hold off. I think there is benefit in taking your time with it. I think the more times, and I think they have time. Like, yeah, I would probably hold off. I would be reluctant. Now, will they have it all done? Yeah, they might do, but I think I would be reluctant to have it all done and dusted, and not come back to it. I think things can happen, and when they're handing it up in 6th year, I think you'd need to, yeah, I would be reluctant to have it all done and dusted before the summer holidays. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'd hold off just in case.
And then the last one there is, what style of referencing do you use? So you can use,
yeah, you can use whatever style you want, really, as long as you're referencing it properly. I think we use kind of sort of the Harvard style there, but I don't think they're going to be particularly fussy. I think what they say in that is just that their sources are acknowledged and referenced. I don't think they've actually specified as a reference style. So I think as long as you kind of, and again, if you look at the book in chapter 1 of the book, you'll see we've got a whole little thing there about how to reference. So go to chapter 1. It's in there. It'll show them exactly what to do, or you can show them that example there of how we referenced that and go with that, but they haven't specified.
There's actually an activity then, Jacqueline, for that chapter 1 for the referencing in the student activity book, which I actually got my students doing the first week. We kind of looked at that chapter 1, and so it's nice and simple. It's easy. You just use that exact form if you want. It's kind of a lot less more complicated than some of the other ones out there. So you can go ahead and do that one as well. So if there are all the questions, guys, I know, and I know Kelly put it up there, feel free to follow Julie and I on X. We're putting up loads of lesson plans and loads of extra resource stuff as we go. And if there's stuff relevant to this, then look, we'll post it and reach out to us if there's anything that you need as well. Anyway, we'll get back to you as quick as we possibly can. So
yeah, and listen, thank you again, everybody, for attending, and a massive thank you to yourself, Jane, and to you, Julie, for hosting. It's really appreciated, and I definitely know that everybody on chat and everything is feeling a little more incentivized and ready for it.
I hope so. I hope people feel a little bit more supported. I hope people feel a little bit more prepared for it. That was the whole point, that kind of, I know what it's like. I've been there with the economics when you don't have a clue, and I'm hoping that, you know, I do feel a lot more confident this time around.
Yeah, just in the chat again, a couple of people mentioning just to find some solace. And I actually think, as you said, Julie, it's or maybe it was yourself, Jane, just that it could even be a brainstorming opportunity as well for your brief and for moving forward for your projects too. So just to note, I have a copy of all of the questions. So you know, we can, like I said, you can reach out to the girls on X. We've got the handles in their chat. And if you do have any further questions, you can contact us at Edco either on social media or directly with the girls. And we'll take a note of them. I think they are all kind of, just summary and recap. So thank you very much, everyone.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a million. Take care.